Chapter 6, 3 meals a day and a snack. It was the last day of school, the first time I went to Andrus. It was hot. The sun was shining. I remember standing on the corner, waiting for the cab to come pick me and my mother up, watching all the kids come home from school. For the final few weeks of the school year, School 18 had sent me home with a tutor who used to come to my apartment on School Street to teach me lessons. So I hadn't seen any of the other kids in a while. They were all laughing and joking around. Their arms were filled with books and papers that they had from clearing out their desks for the summer, and I was sad I couldn't be with them. Then I noticed a girl walking by wearing this long blue and white robe. I had seen her around school a few times before, and she always had that robe on over her clothes. I guess her family must have been Muslim or something. And then, like every other time I saw her, I just couldn't stop staring at her. Andrus wasn't like anything I had ever seen in Yonkers. It was a very old, countryside looking place. There were big church like buildings everywhere where the kids took classes. The living quarters were organized in cottages or halls and sat on the side of this big green field. The counselor that had taken us on a tour explained to my mother that Julia Dykeman Andrus prided herself on rehabilitating children who were unable to make it within the regular school system. I didn't see any black people. I remember really not wanting to go there until the counselor started talking about trips. Earl, did you hear what I was telling your mom? In a couple of weeks, we're all going upstate to a place called Lake George for a vacation. They have a wonderful amusement park up there. It's called The Great Escape. Have you ever been to an amusement park? No, I answered curiously, suddenly thinking that this place might not be so bad after all. Do they have bumper cars? I'm sure they do. The first thing I remember about living at Andrus was how good the food was. So even though this was the first time I was away from home, I really didn't give a fuck because I was eating. What? We about to eat again? I would ask my teachers. They'd give us 3 big meals a day with dessert. And then we would get a snack at night. Shit, I was straight. Plus, there was a color television in every cottage that didn't have a hanger antenna or a ball of aluminum foil attached to it. We could watch what we wanted during our free time, and sometimes they would even show us movies. There was a stereo in the common room of every cottage, and the kids could actually touch. Not like my mother's 8-track joint that I wasn't allowed to use by myself. And every kid would get his own set of clothes with pajamas for bedtime. All of this was way beyond what I was used to. The only thing I didn't like about life in the cottages was the everyday shower thing. I mean, I'm 10 years old. Give me a week, I'll stay dirty. There were chores that every kid had to do too, but I didn't mind doing those because they would give us money for them. Each week, you would be given an allowance of $3.50 to do a different chore, like cleaning the bathroom, vacuuming the living room, or doing the dishes in the cafeteria. There was one chore I did hate, though, and that was waxing the dining room floor. We called it doing the buffer. The janitors would cut up all these gray blankets into squares, and you had to put your feet on them and walk around the whole floor, back and forth, over and over, pressing down as you slid the wax all around. There would be 3 kids buffing at a time, but it would still take us almost an hour to finish a room. But this was the first time I ever made any money for anything, and 350 a week started to add up. Andrews kept our money in separate accounts they set up for the kids, and every Saturday I would take $2 out of mine and buy some candy and a Mad magazine. I would read the Mad from cover to cover and try to draw the puzzle picture they always had on the back page that you had to fold together. The school didn't mind what you bought. Instead, they encouraged you to buy the things you wanted so they could show you the benefits of working for a living. For Christmas, every kid would be given an extra $25 on their account so that they could order gifts out of this catalog they had. You were supposed to buy something for your parents and siblings first, and then get one thing for yourself. That first year, I ordered this racing car set that came with this track you had to put together. It had a big jump in the middle. Watch the world's fastest car defy gravity, the box said. I must have played with that thing for months. That spring, the school did take us to Lake George, and the Great Escape roller coaster was definitely as much fun as the counselor said it would be. I remember I fell into this heavy crush on this girl when we were up there. I don't remember what her name was. I just remember getting this sick feeling in my stomach. If I was older, I probably would have realized that feeling meant I wanted to fuck. But at 10 years old, I had no idea about sex. I mean, I had barely hit puberty. After spending that first day at the amusement park, they took us down to the water, and I just spent the rest of my time catching frogs. But surprisingly, the best times for me at Andrus weren't when we went away somewhere, they were when we had family visits. Hi, man, my mother would say. Whenever she was happy to see me, my mother used to call me her little man. How are you doing? I miss my little man. By this time, my mother had another little girl named Shayla. She was 6 years old. She was 6 years younger than me, and my mother would bring her and my sister Bonita up to campus, and the four of us would hang out together. We would play catch or frisbee on the lawn, and in the winter time, we went sleigh riding. One time, the school had to give my mother a whole new pair of boots to wear so she and I could slide down the hills in the snow, and she wouldn't mess up her shoes. It was like my mother liked me when I was at Andrus. I thought maybe she even felt bad for sending me there, and after her and my sisters would leave, I always felt sad. I missed them, and even if this place did have a lot of nice things and 3 meals a day, it was still strange, and I wanted to go home. Race wasn't an issue for me, maybe because of how many kids wouldn't fuck with me growing up. I told myself that I would be cool with anyone who was cool with me. It didn't matter whether they were black, white, brown, or purple. The first white kid I ever really knew was a kid from my hood called Anthony Butler. He was bad like me, and occasionally him and I would hang out together in his house on Oak Street. Well, one afternoon his mother was home, and all hell broke loose. The second she saw me walk in the house, she started screaming, Anthony, what the fuck? Get that nigger out of here. I didn't even I didn't know enough to understand what she was bugging about, but I knew enough to leave. Get that nigga the fuck out of this house, she kept wailing. The funny thing was that Anthony wasn't one of those rich white kids from the other side of town. He was just as poor as I was. Oak Street was just a few blocks away from the projects. Mom, why are you bugging out? He yelled back at her. Anthony was cool about it. He didn't care that his mother was a racist or what she thought about him having black friends. A few minutes later, he just came outside, called his mother a name, and the two of us went off and hung out. So I had no problem with my roommate at Andrus being a chubby white kid from Long Island, or the fact that he played the song Stairway to Heaven every night on his record player. We had a stereo in the common area that all of the kids shared, but Glenn's parents decided to get him one of his own. That meant that he could play his 10-minute Led Zeppelin song over and over again. After a while, I started to like the record, even though every night I had to get the sound of that electric guitar out of my head so I could go to sleep. Glenn and I got along pretty well. He was the person who showed me how to smoke a cigarette and later would show me how to get high. So that's probably why the first few months at Andrus went by pretty fast. After a few weeks, I was used to the routine of classes and meals and chores. I had forgotten about School Street and the dramas of School 18 and was having a good time. It was like the campus became my whole world, and before I knew it, I had been away from home for almost a year. It was one night while buffing the dining room floor, though, that my trouble started. Adam was this Chinese kid who lived in the cottage next to mine. He was a year older than I was, but for some reason we were always assigned to the same chores. And from the first day I met him, I didn't like him. It wasn't because he was Chinese. There was just something about the way he looked at me that bothered me. We were similar in a lot of ways, so maybe that was it. But I don't think Adam could accept the fact that I was as smart as he was. So he always competed with me. Like he always had something to prove. Because of that, Adam and I would always argue, and at least once or twice a week, our arguments would turn into fistfights. But on this day, instead of arguing, Adam and I spent our time getting creative. We dreamed up all kinds of crazy stuff we could do around campus, and then for some reason, we thought about setting the basement floor on fire. We didn't want to burn anything, we were just wondering if the floor would turn blue if we lit it up. Shouldn't a blue flame turn whatever it burns blue? And wouldn't it make it easier to clean? We thought up a plan. We knew we would probably find something flammable in the garbage room in the hallway. Add that to a can of paint, and we would be good. Well, we made a fire with a blue flame, all right, but the floor didn't burn blue, it turned black, and the fire wouldn't stop burning. 24 hours later, after the whole building almost burned down, Andrus charged me with arson. They knew it was an accident, but they said that one of the janitors heard me say, "Where's the match?" And that was the evidence that they used against me. But Adam wasn't charged. It seemed the janitor didn't hear him say anything, so he got away with it altogether. That's when I decided that I hated him. Right away, we started fighting again, and after our third fight on as many days, it became a major problem. I didn't want to shake his hand and say it was over like the teachers wanted me to. That was bullshit. It wasn't over for me. I don't like you, motherfucker, and I'm gonna kill you. We were in the arts and crafts class. Mother's Day was coming up, and they had us making flower pots to give to our moms on the next family visit. Adam came over and looked at mine. "Yo, that looks kind of nice, Earl." "Thanks," I said back. When he walked away, something just hit me. See, all these years I had thought about killing without being able to do anything about it. But now I was old enough to pull it off. So I just got out of my chair, went to Adam's table, and grabbed him in a chokehold. I squeezed as hard as I could. When they finally pulled me off of him, his face was blue, and he was already unconscious. When the teachers revived him, a few seconds later, all this blood started gushing out of his nose. Adam had been adopted by two old, wealthy white people, and they weren't trying to let their kid get attacked, let alone attacked by a poor black kid from the project. So they didn't hesitate pressing charges on me for assault. And now I had a problem. Andrus decided that Earl Simmons was no longer fit to be a part of the normal school population. I had to immediately move out of my room in the cottage and for the rest of my term live in the school infirmary. I was no longer permitted to take classes with the other kids, eat meals with the other kids, or see any of them at any time for recreation or otherwise. Just like School 18 put me out a little more than a year before, now Andrus was through with me. After they realized that I couldn't stay in the infirmary all day, "The kid's not sick, he can't stay here and take up a bed," I was moved into a small, unused office in the administrative building where I had to stay during school hours. I was to do all of my work there and then just report to the infirmary in the evening. The infirmary was in the same building, so all I had to do was go upstairs and walk down the hall. That 1 minute walk from the office to the infirmary was the only exercise I had for the next 3 months. The office was on the third floor with a window that looked out onto the front courtyard. They had a lot of antique furniture in the room, and I remember sitting for hours in this dusty wooden chair, looking at all of the weird designs. By the afternoon, I would finish the work that they had prepared for me and then just stare out of the window, wishing I could go outside and play with the other kids. Talk about lonely, just like they wanted. I didn't see any kids at all during the day because there were no classes in the administrative building. The only children who were there were the ones that were there for an interview or orientation or something, and they never came by the office where I was anyway. I didn't see many adults either. The only people I saw were the same two or three teachers that would come in my room every day to give me my work, and this big fat nurse that would give me my meals. That nurse never showed any feeling toward me, no emotion, never asked why I was there or what my problem was. She, like the rest of the people in that place, was just a middle aged white lady doing her job. "Here's your lunch." Since I wasn't in the cafeteria, of course I couldn't choose the food that I wanted. It was always just the basic tray, and she always forgot the salt and pepper and ketchup. Fucking bitch. So much for enjoying the food. After about a week going through that, I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand not being able to do or eat what I wanted. Couldn't stand being locked in, alone for so many hours with nothing to do. That's when I started to finish all the work they gave me as quickly as possible, as I possibly could, just to spite my teachers. "Here you go. Here's your assignment, lady. I'm done." Suddenly, I could hear the other kids playing outside my window, and I started getting angry, started pacing the room. "Fuck you. Fuck my work. Fuck everything." The next time my mother came up for a visit, I told her how they were punishing me and begged her to let me leave. "I'm not going to uphold you in your wrongdoing, Earl. You made your bed hard. So now you have to lay in it." If my mother's first visit reminded me of why I loved her, this one reminded me of why I hated her. I started feeling like a caged animal. I was trapped. There was nothing that I could do or say to get out of that office. I began to listen to my instincts, and my anger started to explode. Not only did I stop giving a fuck about everyone and everything around me, I began to believe all the bad that was ever said about me. Earl is manipulative. Earl is a problem. Earl has made his bed hard. And I swore that I would have the last laugh. You thought you saw a young kid from the ghetto that you could save, huh? You thought you had a Yonkers kid from School Street that you could just rehabilitate? Yeah, okay. I bet you didn't know what my name is. My name is Crazy Earl. Crazy Earl. That's what they call me. And trust me, when I tell you that, you don't even know who the fuck you're dealing with. Chapter 7. Crazy Earl tries it on. The 18 months I spent in Andrus gave me a rep with kids in the neighborhood. Back then, you had to be an extra special badass to be sent away to a group home. And while I was away, Buzzy started threatening everyone he fought that he was going to put his crazy nephew on them. When I came home, I made sure that I lived up to that reckless reputation. When we would throw snowballs at other kids and random passers-by from the top of the hills near our house, I put rocks in mine. When we wanted to learn how to put somebody in a sleeper hold, knocking someone out, knocking someone unconscious for a second by squeezing a special vein in their neck, I suggested we practice on each other. It was like whenever we thought of doing something, I convinced my uncles to take it a step further. Whenever they wanted something, I had a plan to get us that and a little bit more. One day I dared two of Buzzy's friends to sneak up on this woman and steal her pocketbook. I didn't know anything about robbing. I just wanted to see if I could get somebody else to do something that bold. I told them that the woman wouldn't see them if they did it quick. And even if she did, she wouldn't be able to catch them. I told them it was the perfect plan. When they agreed to do it, my uncles and I made sure we weren't stupid enough to be nearby. But when they came back to where we were hiding, I was shocked to find out that not only had those two kids taken the woman's purse without being caught, but now they were holding $150. Hey, I want some of that. You know you can't go home with that much cash in your pocket, I told the dumber looking one. Your mother's gonna find out and whoop your ass. Buzzy and Collie looked at me and tried not to laugh. But see, my mama ain't gonna do that, I went on. So I think that money that you stole is really better off with me. After beating them for almost an hour, I got those kids so shook about getting busted by their mom, they actually gave in and gave me all of their earnings. I took their whole 150 with pride and then gave them each back a $5 bill for their hard work. Here, now get the fuck out of here, stupid. When me and my uncles got back to my grandmother's, Rhonda and Raquella saw us counting it and taxed us for more than half of what we got. But it was cool because me and my uncle still had enough dough to roll some singles behind our ear and do our thing at Al and Floyd's grocery store down the street. That's where the crazy Kong machine was. See, most days hanging out in there, we'd have to watch other kids play video games because we never had money. But that day, we had more quarters than we knew how to spend. It didn't take long for me, Collie, and Buzzy to get the run of our block, at least among the kids who were around the same age as us. And if anybody wanted to test us, the Buzzy surprise was a good way of keeping them in check. Yo, man, come here for a minute. You want the Buzzy surprise? The what? The Buzzy surprise. Everybody's getting one. When the unsuspecting kid would say yes, Buzz would reach back and punch him dead in his eye. The kid would almost always fall backward, and by the time he got up to see who hit him, we would be 3 blocks away and around the corner laughing, already recapping how Buzz's fist looked smashed against the kid's face. My uncles and I definitely thought we were slick, but we weren't that slick because sometimes we would end up on Alexander Street. Alexander Street was where the Yonkers City Jail was. Yonkers is the only city in the state besides New York to have its own city jail. When you're arrested, you have to stay there until you're arraignment in front of a judge, and your case is either thrown out, you're released on bail, or you're sent to Valhalla, the prison that serves all of Westchester County, to await trial. Across the street from the city jail was the youth division. That's where anyone under the age of 17 gets held until a parent comes to pick them up. I was 7 years old the first time I went there, busted for shoplifting out of the fine ass supermarket in the square. I thought I was the man at the time, but now I can imagine how obvious I must have looked with a whole box of Entenmann's pie stuffed down my shirt. I was always scared when I went down to Alexander Street because there was nothing there besides a few run-down factories and the MTA train station. No one lived that close to the waterfront, so you got the feeling that anything could happen to you and nobody would ever know. A few of the cops that dealt with the kids did have good hearts, but they would try to scare you first. You want me to bring you across the street? Huh? You want to go see the big boys? Well, keep doing what you're doing then. I'm telling you, those men will fuck you in your ass. Later they would get more real. What are you doing, Earl? You seem like a good kid. You want to do this shit for the rest of your life? You want to be in and out of jail? I remember I got one of those talks when Andrus sent me there for the arson charge. I had to sit in a small holding cell listening to this officer preach to me until they contacted my mother. Then when my mother came, she started whooping my ass before we even left the building. Okay, Mrs. Simmons, you can punish him when you get home, the officer said. I guess he didn't want to be witness to anything. After I came home from Andrus, I tried to stay at my grandmother's house as much as I could because at home things had gotten worse. Not only had my mother given my toy pickup truck away, you don't play with it, Earl. But how could I have played with it if I wasn't home? When I left, you told me don't worry about a thing, and that was my favorite truck, Mama. But Richie the mailman was still making house calls. The difference was that I wasn't 8 years old anymore. No, man. No. Get away from me. You ain't my father. As usual, he had just finished getting briefed by my mother and was standing in my doorway with a belt in his hand. But I was tired of being nervous around this guy. I was tired of being scared around anybody, period. Fuck you. He was shocked. What did you say to me? I just couldn't take it anymore, so I summoned all the courage I had and screamed as loud as I could. Fuck you! I couldn't believe the results. Richie yelled back at me and told me how bad I was, but I didn't get the beating. That belt never touched me. A few minutes later, him and my mother were at the kitchen table wanting to talk. Oh, so this is how it goes down. I zap out, and then you want to talk. A few minutes ago, you were coming to whip my ass. Now you want to ask me what's wrong? Maybe getting reckless is not such a bad thing after all. But it seemed my mother had another plan. Punishment. First, it was for a weekend. My mother sent me to my room all day, Saturday and Sunday. Even though I hated hearing all the other kids playing outside the window downstairs, that wasn't too bad because by the time I started to get bored with all my cars, it was already Sunday evening and Monday I was free. Then my punishment was extended to a week, and that was tougher. I could only leave my room to eat and go to the bathroom. No TV, no playing with Bonita, no nothing. When a week didn't work, then my mother took all the cars and toys out of my room and extended my grounding time to a month. You didn't learn yet, huh? She would ask me, frustrated that I was still doing everything that she told me was wrong or bad. 30 days I had to spend in my room with the door closed, alone. The only thing I could do was come out to eat and get some water. I stayed getting water. Being punished at home was worse than Andrus because this was home, and I knew my sisters were right outside the door doing whatever they wanted, probably laughing at me the whole time. I was so bored, I remember spending whole afternoons just sitting on the floor studying the cracks in my wall. I knew exactly how all of the paint bubbles looked because I made them look like faces. When I got tired of that, I used to peel the paint off my ceiling. Once I saw it chipping in one corner, I'd peel it off to see how far it could go because it was a game and I hated it when it stopped. Fucking paint. Other times, the zipper on my pants became a fire engine to me. The top was the truck part and the zip was the ladder. I would just pull the ladder up and down and let my imagination do the rest. Or I would find a piece of string and pull it through the air. When the string used to float, I would imagine it was a starship. If I still had textbooks lying around, I would spend a lot of time doing schoolwork, like the Reader's Concept stuff, because I liked the Reader's Concept stuff because I could do all of the problems and then check my answers in the back. First, I saw how many I got right. Then I tried to figure out why my other answers were wrong. I kept reading as much as I could. While in my room on punishment, I must have read the book White Fang like 5 times. After a while, the length of my grounding didn't make any difference to me. Andrus had introduced me to this kind of isolation, and I was getting better at creating my own world. Occasionally, when Uncle Pinky was over, he would pop his head into my room and ask if I needed anything. No, I became good at shutting everyone out, and everybody else in the apartment did the same. Anyone who came over to School Street during those years shouldn't have been surprised to find me in my room on punishment. Bonita and Shayla in their room minding their business, and my mother in her bedroom resting for her night job. All 4 of us would have our doors closed. There was one time when we did get to go out, though. That was when we'd go to Aunt Vern's place across town on Cedar Place. Even if I was on punishment, my mother would normally bring me and my sisters with her over there. Through the years, Aunt Vern tried to step in whenever my mother chose out. My mom, being a Jehovah's Witness, rarely celebrated Christmas, New Year's, or any of our birthdays. So most of the time, we would go over to Aunt Vern's house to put up a tree or exchange presents. Aunt Vern was gangsta, broad shoulders, almost 6 feet tall. Vern was one of those whoop a bitch ass type of girls. She wasn't crazy with it, but if you brought any bullshit to her, she would put you down. Everybody knew Laverne. Many weekends, I would wake up in her house smelling breakfast, cooking. Music would be playing, and Vern always had the parties, the adult type of parties where there was always lots of drinking and smoking going down. There would be about 15 or 20 grown ups running around, and it was funny because one of them was always given the job to play with the kids. They would enjoy it at first when the party was in the living room, but as soon as everybody disappeared into that private off limits to kids room that Vern always had, then they would get mad. Damn, can't you kids take care of yourselves? I always came up with the reason to need one of the adults in the room for something, so I could knock on the door and see what was going on. Get away from this door, Earl. We're in here doing grown folk stuff. See, my aunt was a lesbian, and as far back as I could remember, she always had girlfriends, and all of her girlfriends had girlfriends. So I grew up thinking lesbianship was normal. Between all of them, my sisters and my mother, I was like the only nigga at these parties. Although once I got used to being around a lot of older women, I did kind of enjoy it. I had my first drink at one of Vern's parties. My aunt gave it to me to be funny. Here, Earl, take a sip of this. My mom just sat there like, Vern, you crazy. And everybody laughed at how I reacted to my first taste of poison. Look at him wobbling. I wish I could have turned around to everybody and told them how they were probably fucking my whole life up, turning me into a drunk at 7 years old. But I didn't know any better. This is what's up. This is where the in crowd is. Okay, fuck it. I'm gonna do what y'all are doing. But after a few more sips of vodka, suddenly I had to lie down. I thought I was tired, but I wasn't tired. I was drunk. That was okay because once everyone at the party thought I was asleep, then I got to hear the dirt. Then I got to hear what was really going on. All I had to do was put my ears on the radar, and I had a method for that. First, you have to close your eyes to block out any distractions. Then you focus. Punch out all of the music and the extra sounds that you hear in the bathroom or in the other bedrooms and just focus on what you hear in the kitchen. Blip, blip, blip. Your radar is on now. That's how I found out how well my aunt could curse. There's a skill to cursing. Everybody doesn't have it. You have to be able to put certain words together in a row, like, you bitch ass cocksucking dick rotting motherfucking faggot, and and never the same combination twice. You cocksucking homo, nondescript, derelict, stinking ass bitch. I remember I used to laugh at my sister because all she could come up with was asshole. Shut up, Bonita, I used to tease her. You can't curse. But Vern had it. She made it where a nigga would believe it. Oh no, not today. You good for nothing, sorry behind, lazy ass motherfucker. So I knew with that mouth that she could get down for me, no matter what. I just wish she was around that day I needed her most. After I left Andrus, it was decided that I go to a progressive school on the rich side of town. That was not a good idea. I don't know anybody there. I didn't know anybody there where only there were only two other black kids in the whole school. And after all that I just had been through in group home and all I was still going through at home, I was ready to zap out. I lasted in that school about 2 weeks. "We're going to send a tutor to your house," the vice principal told me the day she gave up and put me in a cab. It was a little after 12 in the afternoon and my mother wasn't home, so they tried to contact my aunt. She wasn't home either, but Paula, my aunt's girlfriend at the time, was in the house and she told the school they could send me to her. Well, as soon as I got over there, Paula broke this big wooden billy club over my head. I guess she felt I needed more discipline. But I didn't know what the hell was going on. She just attacked me when I walked in the door. I tried to run away from her and hide under the kitchen table, but she followed me with the club and kept hitting me on my arm that I was holding up to block my face. She hit me so hard, so many times, the wood started splintering off of the club down to the fucking metal inside. When she saw that, she stopped. But by this time, blood and wood splinters were all in my aunt's carpet, and my elbow had swollen so large it looked like it had a big salt ball in it. She beat me like I was hers. She beat me like I was grown. I didn't deserve that one. When my Uncle Pinky came by a few hours later, I pulled him into the bathroom. I felt like he was the only help I had. "Please, Uncle Pinky, help me, please. She beat me." My uncle looked at me and said he would talk to her. But by then, Paula had left the house, and when I got home, my mother didn't say nothing. It was only when I went to my grandmother's house the next day that anyone raised hell. I knew my grandmother wouldn't ever let anyone put their hands on me like that, and it was a big family controversy. It was like my father's side against my mother's side. My mother just told everyone that it wasn't none of their business. She was raising me the best she could. In 1981, my mother grounded me for the entire summer, June, July, and August. I didn't even know what I did. That was the most frustrating part. I mean, I could be locked up in a room by myself. I didn't care what things you took out of it or how long it was for, but to be forced to be punished without knowing the reason why, that was fucked up. Sometimes I was guilty. I knew that. But other times I didn't do whatever it was she was accusing me of. And my mother just didn't want to believe me. One time I remember she had given me a beating in the kitchen in front of the stove with one of those thick wooden spoons that folks hang on the wall for decoration. But I didn't do what she said I had done. I didn't do it. I kept trying to explain to her, but it was no use. So when she finished, I just ran down the hallway screaming as loud as I could, "Mama, you're a liar! You're a liar!" Then she came in my room and beat me some more for talking to her that way until she finally heard what my explanation was. "Well, next time say that," she told me. "But I did say that, Mama. That's what I was trying to say to you the whole time." It never mattered. My little sister Shayla was about 5 when she started waking up to the sounds of my mother going crazy. When I started getting old enough to outrun her and the grounding wasn't working, my mother decided to beat me while I was sleeping. In the middle of the night, while I was still in the bed, she'd just pull my covers up from the bottom, sit on my back, and just wear my behind out. Before I even knew I wasn't dreaming anymore, I would feel the hits on my ass and the back of my legs. If I had been sleeping on my back, then she'd hit me in the chest. "Ma, stop, please, I can't breathe." "No, Mama, no, I can't breathe." "Well, when I get finished whipping your behind, then I'll take you to the emergency room for your asthma." And that's exactly what she did. After she was done, she'd call the cab, tell Benita to look after Shayla, and we'd go to the hospital so they could put me on a breathing machine. I don't remember the doctors ever asking what brought on the attack. The next time she hits me, I'm gonna. Things got so bad that I began to contemplate my mother's murder. Night after night, I would think the act all the way through, play the steps over and over in my mind. First, go in the living room, then kick her in the stomach and make sure she falls out of the window. Then all of my pain would be over. The vision always ended up with my mother holding onto the windowsill. "Earl, help me," she'd called out. She'd call out for me to save her, And that was when I would always feel bad and end up pulling her back in. I would see her hanging there begging for her life, and I wouldn't be able to go through with it. That's what made me know that I really didn't want to kill my mother. I didn't want to kill her. I was just mad at her. I loved her. And no matter what she was doing to me, I couldn't hurt her. I just wanted her to have my back and get down for me. I wanted her to feel like how my grandmother felt about me, or at least try. That same year, my father left Yonkers and moved to Philadelphia. He said it was a place where he could make a living for himself selling his paintings. By this time, he had two other sons, Joseph Jr. and Jesse, who he had by his girlfriend, Kathy, the white woman my mother had told me about. They had been living together in this small house on Woodward Street. I had actually gone over there a few times. Kathy would move two beds together for my brother Joe and me to sleep on. Joe was only a few years younger than me, but Jesse was still a baby, so he would be in a crib crying. My father was rarely there. The times my father was around in the house, I couldn't find a connection with him. I remember one night we were all watching something on television together, me, my father, Kathy, and Joe. And when he came back from the bathroom, he looked at me and asked what had happened on the show. I didn't have anything to say. I knew what had happened, but for some reason I couldn't find the words to say anything to him. He shrugged, and we all just sat there in silence. The times my father tried to do something nice for me always seemed to backfire as well. One time at my grandmother's house, he gave me this metal plane that he had got from one of his artist friends on the street. It shot sparks out of the back like the cars I liked, and had a cool propeller on it that you could twirl. But when we left a few hours later, I forgot it upstairs. The next day, when he saw me without it, he got mad and told me that I obviously didn't want the gift. He said he was going to give it to my brother instead. Well, fuck it then. I don't care anyway. But now my father was moving out of Yonkers altogether. I guess he wouldn't have to worry about going broke and having to sleep in Central Park anymore. That was good, I guess. But sometimes I used to wonder if I would have been happier with him, even if that meant that I would have to be homeless. I mean, anything was better than living with my mother. I didn't need much more. I really didn't need to be taken care of. I just needed to learn. I just needed to be shown.